Anyone who's ever been a scumbag knows, no matter how attractive someone is, you eventually get tired of the face. The day the college entrance exams ended, I threw a wad of cash at Willow, the school beauty, in front of the entire class. With an arrogant smirk, I said, "I'm done playing around. Let's just call it quits." Everyone thought Willow would slap me across the face, but to everyone's surprise, she crouched down and quietly picked up the bills one by one. Her voice trembled slightly as she said, "Okay." When summer vacation ended, Willow boarded a train to the capital, and I flew abroad to begin a long round of chemotherapy. Years later, I returned to my homeland, lying on a hospital bed, my hair completely gone from treatment. I was busy picking out a wig when the door to the hospital room opened. Willow walked in, wearing a white lab coat. Our eyes met. Chapter 1. When Willow entered, I was bent over on the bed, but in the air, from my phone came the loud, enthusiastic voice of a live shopping host. "It's the shopping carnival, buy now or regret it forever. Mr. Wong, shopping for wigs again." The noisy room instantly went silent. The nurse pointed at me and said, "Dr. Liu, this is a new patient in our study group. He's already signed the consent form." The moment Willow looked over, my head tilted like doing a headstand, and my mind went completely blank. 10 years, someone I thought I'd never see again, was suddenly my attending physician, and she just had to walk in right while I was doing gas-passing exercises. Kill me now. I scrambled to sit up and adjusted my crooked face mask, didn't dare make a sound. Even without meeting her eyes, I could feel her gaze on me, cold, no warmth in it, so different from the innocent and cute way she used to look at me. Whenever she messed up a question back in the day, the nurse said, "Mr. Wong, this is our lead physician, Willow. She'll be responsible for your treatment plan." I avoided eye contact and gave a quick nod, didn't make a single sound. The intern beside her held a clipboard and began dutifully reciting my case file. George, male, 28 years old. Enlarged lymph nodes discovered in the neck during a routine checkup 10 years ago. Preliminary diagnosis. Willow cut her off. "No need to go on." The intern blinked. "Oh, you know this patient?" My heart jumped into my throat. I pretended to be busy fiddling with my phone. I could feel Willow's gaze lingering on my patchy scalp. After a moment, her voice came flatly. "No, the case was just a bit unusual, so I looked at it beforehand." My phone automatically redirected to a shopping site. The payment countdown had already started. Seconds ticked by. I zoned out. Didn't click buy in time. The intern finished presenting the treatment plan. Willow listened without any visible emotion. She said, "Okay, continue current treatment. Review again tomorrow." Then she moved on to the next patient. Rounds took about 20 minutes. She never looked at me again. I moved my stiff neck and realized my back was drenched in sweat. The wig I'd wanted. Sold out. Thanks to the interruption. Sigh. What rotten luck. The only silver lining. Willow had clearly forgotten all about me. Even when the intern said my name, she didn't react at all. Chapter 2. When I first met Willow, we didn't get along at all. I acted like a spoiled brat, relying on my family's money to get away with anything. My grades were at the very bottom of the class. To get me to focus on school, our homeroom teacher made Willow sit next to me. At first, Willow barely acknowledged my existence. She just kept working through her test papers, over and over again. She was beautiful, kind, and brilliant. Her only flaw, she was poor. I was the opposite. Dumb, bad-tempered, and rich. Sitting next to Willow, I probably looked like one of those dumb rich kids. Fortunately, I had decent emotional intelligence, while the rest of the boys sent her flowers and love letters. I bought her prep books like 5 years of college entrance exams, 3 years of practice tests. It took less than a semester to win her over. The day I carefully kissed Willow for the first time happened to be her birthday. She looked up at me with watery eyes and asked, "What do you mean by this?" It was my first time kissing anyone. My brain completely froze. I stammered, "Isn't it obvious? Be my girlfriend." Her ears turned pink, and she softly replied, "Okay." Those were such good times. I never cared much for studying before, but once I started sitting next to Willow in class, I listened to her tutor me every day. In just 1 year, my total score jumped by over 100 points. With those numbers, I could get into a university in Beijing. No need for a long-distance relationship with Willow. If only that medical checkup hadn't revealed something was wrong. The sound of my retching echoed through the hospital room. I clutched the toilet bowl, vision going dark, my body drenched in cold sweat. My buddy David patted my back and said, "This can't go on, man. You're reacting way too hard. I'm calling the doctor." I grabbed his arm and said, "No need. I'm used to it." Back then, I went through 27 rounds of chemo alone overseas. I survived it. Now, after 10 years, the old illness is back. No idea how much more I'll have to endure. If I keep calling for help every time, I'm bound to piss someone off. David frowned, unconvinced. Isn't Willow your attending doctor? I'll go find her. She must have some way to help. I stopped him quickly. No, please don't. Be glad she doesn't recognize me. If she does, she'll probably prescribe 100 rounds of chemo just to get back at me. The next second, a cold voice rang out behind me. Who told you need 100 rounds of chemo? My whole body stiffened. I didn't even dare turn around. David let out a relieved breath. Dr. Lou, George is not feeling well, Willow said calmly. This is a normal reaction to chemotherapy, but if it becomes too intense, whatever she said to David after that, I didn't hear, because my head was buzzing with one thing. Did she just hear what I said? Chapter 3. That evening, a nurse came in to give me an anti-nausea injection. She asked casually, though with a hint of probing. Do you know Dr. Lou? Lying on the bed, feeling like death, I muttered. Nope. Why do you ask? She said. Dr. Lou normally doesn't handle things like this, but today, she personally went to the office and asked the doctor to prescribe you anti-nausea meds. I stared at myself in the mirror. I'd lost a lot of weight. The toll of illness showed clearly on my face, compared to how I looked 10 years ago. I was practically a different person. No way. Even if Willow had a good memory. Yes, she did have a good memory. What if she'd never let go of that grudge? My name, George, was printed in bold letters right on the placard by my bed. Why would I ever think she wouldn't recognize me? David chimed in. Your Dr. Lou's only 28, right? That's pretty young to be a full attending physician. The nurse replied. Wow, you really did your homework. Dr. Lou completed the MD PhD fast track. She graduated around 26 or 27. She's incredibly accomplished, way above the average. Noticing that David seemed interested in Willow, she smiled and teased. Thinking of chasing after our Dr. Lou? Better not bother. She already has someone she likes. David turned and gave me a sheepish smile, but the very next second, we heard the nurse add. She's seeing the hospital director's son. He's got a PhD from abroad. Word is they might get married soon. David's smile froze awkwardly on his face. I rubbed at the black screen of my phone, suddenly very fixated on the smudges on the display. After the nurse left, David couldn't hold it in any longer. He said, George. I'm sorry, man. I waved him off. Come on, what's there to be sorry about? I'm almost 30 now, I added. Those daydreams about some ice-cold goddess falling for me, yeah, I gave those up a long time ago. After that day, I didn't see Willow again, but even though I didn't see her, I'd still catch bits and pieces of her name in hallway conversations. Sometimes she was away at academic conferences. Other times, locked away in the lab doing research. She came in for patient rounds maybe once a week, mostly just to review medication plans. During the chemo break, patients were allowed to go home. So by the time I was discharged, I still hadn't seen her again. On the way back home, I got a call from our high school class monitor. Chapter 4. He was my best buddy in high school, and the first classmate to know about my illness. He asked, George, are you still in Beijing? How's the treatment going? On the other end of the line, I could hear a lively, bustling background. Then another familiar voice cut in, the class academic rep. Why didn't you tell us you were sick? If the class monitor hadn't mentioned it, we'd still be clueless. I'd been on pretty good terms with people in high school. Over the years, I occasionally kept in touch with the monitor and a few others. I smiled and said, didn't want to bother anyone. The monitor replied, come on, don't say that. Tell you what, where are you staying? We'll come visit tomorrow. Unable to argue with their kindness, I gave them my address in the end. Over the years, my family had spent a fortune trying to treat my illness. Thanks to David's help, I'd managed to find a decently priced place to rent in the capital. It was on the first floor, with a small yard facing south. If I were healthy, I could plant flowers, maybe even raise a dog. Most of my high school classmates had stayed in our hometown, and the rest were scattered across the country, so only a handful came, 5 or 6, at most. They arrived carrying bags of groceries. One of them said, we were thinking hot pot, but it's so hot out, how about stir fry instead? Wearing a thick wool cap, I laughed. It's fine, we've got the AC on. I'm craving hot pot too. Everyone rushed into the kitchen, chattering and laughing. Suddenly, the house felt full of life. It almost felt like we had just graduated. As he picked vegetables, the class monitor asked, have you reached out to Willow? I froze for a second. Huh? He said. You didn't know. She specialized in hematology, specifically lymphoma. You should ask her about your case. I frowned and replied vaguely. Oh. I'll see if I get the chance. Truthfully, I really didn't want to get entangled with Willow again. But then the doorbell suddenly rang. The class monitor wiped his hands and went to answer it. The next moment, I heard the rest shout cheerfully, Willow, you finally made it. Someone said. Well, if it isn't our campus beauty, Dr. Lou. Long time no see. Another chimed in. Come on in, George wants hot pot. You're the doctor. You tell us, can he eat it? I stood there frozen, looking like this, worn out, sick, pathetic. Being seen by Willow made me feel like my whole face was suddenly exposed under scorching sunlight, burning with embarrassment. I hadn't expected them to actually contact her. Willow looked at me calmly and said in a soft voice, go with a clear broth. Someone replied right away. Okay. Listen to Dr. Lou, no spicy soup base. The room got busy again. Willow accepted the slippers from the class monitor and changed shoes, then handed a bag of fruit to someone working in the kitchen. Trying to smooth over the awkwardness, the class monitor said, come on, it's all in the past. No point holding onto old grudges. Let bygones be bygones. Willow, we were all reckless kids once, don't take it out on George, another girl added. Come help prep the veggies. Someone stuffed a colander of water spinach into Willow's arms. She was nudged into a seat on the sofa, directly across from me. In that moment, the living room quieted, and it was just the two of us. The AC in the corner let out a rattling hum. I avoided her eyes, awkwardly pulling out a face mask, thinking to put it on. Snap. Willow broke off the stem of the water spinach and said softly, I already recognized you. What's the point of the mask now? Chapter 5. The atmosphere in the living room was a bit awkward. No, to be precise, the only one feeling awkward was me. After a moment of hesitation, I awkwardly pulled my hand back and muttered, a bit dejected. I thought you didn't recognize me, that's why I didn't say hi at the hospital the other day. She said, no need. I blinked. What? She replied, we're not close. No need for greetings. Willow kept her head down, expertly trimming the water spinach. Clearly not interested in chatting, I nodded silently and clumsily pushed a glass of water toward her. I said, would you like some water? She answered, not thirsty, thanks. Icy. She shut me down, and I didn't want to keep forcing warmth on someone cold. So I just sat there quietly, my mind raced, trying to remember if I'd done anything embarrassing during my hospital stay. The class monitor poked his head out from the kitchen and said, George, we're out of paper towels in here. Can you grab a roll for me? Sure, I said, quickly getting up and rummaging through the cabinet. The landlord's old furniture had clearly seen better days. As soon as I pulled open one drawer, the whole cabinet gave a loud clunk and wobbled like it was about to collapse. A photo that had been propped face down on top couldn't hold on. It slid gently and fell straight to the floor. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. Thunk. The frame landed right at my feet, before I could even bend down. Willow had already picked it up from the floor. Because the light was behind her, I couldn't see her expression clearly, but the cold aura around her said enough. She was not pleased. Thanks, I said quietly. Willow didn't reply, following her line of sight. I finally saw what she was staring at. It was a photo I had secretly taken of her sleeping back in high school. The midsummer sunlight streamed through the trees, casting soft patterns on the delicate side of her face. She was sound asleep, so peaceful, she didn't even notice when I gently ran my hand through her hair. In that moment, I seriously considered whether I could get away with grabbing the photo and swallowing it. George, I stared at her blankly. She said, explain this. I hesitated for a few seconds, then instinctively reached up to scratch my head, only to pull out a handful of hair. Fantastic. Under her frosty gaze, I forced a laugh and said, this is just, my ex-wall, haha. Just a little nostalgia. She rolled her eyes. Really? Then Willow pointed to a bunch of photos of me and my buddy David. Her voice, still cold, had a hint of edge. Then what? You dated him too? I swallowed hard and gave a forced laugh. Why yeah, I dated everyone. Her stare was burning into me. I couldn't keep the fake grin up anymore and started darting my eyes around the room. The next second, George, you guys. The class monitor pushed open the kitchen door. But seeing the tense standoff, he froze. Willow furrowed her brows, put the photo frame back in place, pulled out a tissue to wipe her hands, then grabbed her bag and walked toward the door. Willow, where are you going? The class monitor asked. She said, something came up at the hospital. I have to leave. He tried to stop her. But we haven't even finished talking about George yet. Willow, at least stay for dinner. Willow paused at the entryway and glanced at me, as if waiting for me to say something, but I let her down. I didn't say a word. She gave a short, cold laugh. I'm just the unwanted ex. Why would I stay? Click. The door shut. Willow was gone. Chapter 6. Willow's departure left a brief heaviness in the room, but it didn't last long. The rich aroma of the class monitor's hot pot base quickly lifted the mood. I laughed and said, class monitor, you've still got it. All these years, And your cooking skills haven't faded a bit, he chuckled, holding his teacup and giving me a nod. George, don't take it to heart. Willow, don't worry. We'll talk to her again another day. It'll blow over. The others joined in with words of comfort. The monitor added. When I called her, Willow was super busy. The fact that she still showed up, that says a lot. She's definitely going to help you. Another classmate chimed in. Yeah, come on, let's eat. Truth be told, I wasn't even that upset. What I felt more was guilt toward Willow. In my mind, she and we were never meant to be tangled up again, and it didn't feel right to bother her just because I was sick. We had a loud, lively hot pot meal. Midway through, the class monitor started a video call in our high school group chat. Only a few people picked up, but the group quickly came alive. We chatted about everything, just like old times. For a moment, it felt like we were back in those days right before the college entrance exam. Everyone buzzing about dreams and futures, planning a graduation trip. Back then, Willow and I sat next to each other, 1 week before the exam. She came back from the office and found me scribbling nonsense all over a map. She looked puzzled. What are you doing? I held the map up and waved it in front of her. Don't recognize it. It's Beijing. I'd circled 2 spots in red ink. I said, this one's your university, and this one, mine. Then I drew a straight line connecting the two. Shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. I grinned. This is how far we'll be from each other in the future. Willow gave a soft laugh. You're applying to a school in Beijing. Why, you not happy about that? I teased. She sat beside me, carefully stacking her papers and sliding them into the desk drawer. She said quietly, I'm happy, but luck wasn't on my side. A few days later, I got the results of my medical exam. The lab report was a mess. Red flags all over the page. The doctor told my parents to take me to Beijing immediately for further testing. From the looks of it, I wasn't going to make it to college. I tried to sound her out. Hey, if one day I got really sick and couldn't go to Beijing, what would you do? Willow's pen stopped midline. She frowned and asked, did you get sick? I laughed it off. What are you talking about? Do I look sick to you? It was just some online quiz. Answer seriously, she said. I could apply to medical school. Just change my first choice. That one line messed me up. I shoved my math paper onto her desk and muttered, forget it. Just focus on your questions. She loved math more than anything. Why would she want to go into medicine? On the last afternoon of the exam, I started getting a nosebleed. Blood stained the exam paper. Who knows if that counted as a contaminated script? Didn't matter anymore. That night, I left for Beijing. Standing on a bustling street in the capital, I felt a wave of helplessness so strong I almost broke down. Our promise to meet in Beijing. I ended up getting here first. Later came the diagnosis. The return trip home to pack my things. And then, in front of our classmates, I threw a wad of cash at Willow. And just like that, our story ended. Chapter 7. My second hospitalization landed me back in the same ward. Only this time, the patients had changed. The little kid who shared the room with me last time had passed away earlier this month. He was carried out of this very ward, not even 5 years old. When David heard the news, he looked at me, brow furrowed with concern. I was too busy arguing with an online seller to notice. I snapped at my phone. Do I look like a bank robber to you? The reply came back. Dear, we're all law-abiding citizens here. The next second, I sent a photo of myself with a nylon stocking pulled over my head. If I ordered a hat and you sent me pantyhose, what am I supposed to think? That I've got some kind of special fetish? Willow walked in just as I got the refund confirmation. I dove under the blanket like lightning, only my butt sticking out. George. Willow's voice was flat and calm, with my butt in the air. I gritted my teeth and said, George isn't here. I'm David. David gave me a look like, seriously? Willow, of course, pulled the blanket off me. My patchy hair stuck out in all directions. I looked like some mangy mutt caught stealing. Her face was stone cold, lips pressed tight. A nearby doctor chuckled. Willow adjusted your meds and wanted to explain in person. But then she walked in and saw, well, the rest was obvious. Everyone else in the ward was laughing, except Willow. She let out a short, cold snort. Looks like you're not in the mood to listen. I'll come back tomorrow. No, Dr. Lou, please, go ahead. I'm all ears, I blurted out, desperately grabbing her sleeve. Years of chasing after doctors had taught me how to beg with humility. Willow looked down at my hand. She opened her mouth, then bit her lower lip slightly. For a split second, I thought she was about to cry. I must be losing my mind from this illness. Willow stood by the bed and spoke without emotion for nearly 30 minutes. Every sentence was clear, with just the right pauses to make sure I understood. She said she wanted to try a new drug. It had good results, but the side effects were intense. Leaning back against the bed, I smiled and said, hey, I get it. It's a clinical trial, right? Someone's gotta volunteer. I didn't go to college and haven't contributed much to society. If it fails in the end, no big regrets. She cut me off sharply. George, I don't treat human life like some joke. Her tone was firm, her expression serious, lips drawn in a tight line. The side effects hit fast. They started in the morning, and by sundown, I was clutching the toilet, vomiting so hard I thought I might turn myself inside out. The nausea was followed by a burning in my chest and waves of irritability, while David was home resting. I wheeled myself outside to the hospital garden. Dusk, the sunset shimmered quietly across the lake. When the breeze blew, the surface rippled like thousands of golden fish tumbling through waves. I sat there in the wind, occasionally burying my head in a plastic bag to vomit a little. When I looked up again, a man had appeared in front of me. Mr. Wong, what a coincidence. What brings you out here? It was the doctor who had come in with Willow that day. I'd forgotten to ask his name, but he quickly offered it, reaching out a hand with a smile. Makoto Ito. I shook his hand. I remembered, the hospital director's last name was Ito. Could he be the director's son? The one Willow might be marrying? Makoto stood beside me and asked politely. So, how did you and Wiwi meet? It took me a second to realize. Wiwi was Willow. The air suddenly turned, tense. Ex versus fiancé situations are always tricky. I adjusted my crooked hat and said. We were high school classmates. He asked. Just classmates? After a pause, I replied. Yeah, just classmates. Makoto smiled slightly. That's not what I heard. I heard you were Willow's ex-boyfriend. Threw a wad of cash at her after the college entrance exams and dumped her on the spot. His tone was sharp, not even pretending to be polite. Clearly here to stand up for his fiancée. Seeing that I didn't respond, he looked down and went on. What was the reason? You got sick. You thought pushing her away like that would protect her. Still, I stayed silent. The wind whistled past my ears. Then I heard Makoto scoff. So stupid, honestly. I should thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be engaged to Willow today. I'd been sick for so many years. My temper was almost gone. But that line got to me. I shot back. Then get on your knees and thank me. And while you're at it, wire me $5 million. He gritted his teeth. You. I gave him a sideways glance. What do you want to hear? That I regret it. To my surprise, Makoto didn't get mad. He smiled. He asked. So, you don't? Oh, I do, I said. Makoto froze. Then, the next second, I grinned shamelessly and declared. I'm going to win Willow back. I'll confess to her, cry my eyes out, tell her I still love her, and get her to dump you and marry me instead. I lifted my chin proudly, just waiting for that "you just ate shit" expression on his face, but instead, he looked behind me with a weird smile and said, Willow, if your ex confessed to you right now, would you go back to him? My smile froze. It felt like I'd stepped straight into a bottomless pit. I turned around, and there she was. Willow's cold, distant gaze met mine. My face instantly burned like it had been doused in chili oil. Her white coat was dyed orange by the sunset. Her face showed no emotion. She said calmly, You can try. I blinked. Try what? She replied. Say that you still love me. In that moment, the golden light of the setting sun reflected off the lake, casting a shimmering glow that swallowed her figure. I felt dizzy, like I was spinning. Her voice seemed to come from far away, crossing over 10 years to reach me. You can try. Say you still love me. See if I'll ever come back to you. A buzzing filled my head. By the time I came back to my senses, Makoto was already walking away, and Willow was walking toward me. I sat in the wheelchair. My legs felt like they were made of lead. I let her take control of it. I couldn't explain what I was feeling. Embarrassment, guilt, inferiority, regret, layer upon layer of emotion, piling up like a boulder stuck in my throat. Willow pushed me along the edge of the lake. The wind carried her quiet voice. You're not planning to say anything? I stared down at my palms. Say what? She asked. So all that just now was a joke. I drooped my head. My hospital gown fluttered weakly in the wind. I thought of the thinning hair under my hat. It had been impulse just now, but now, all I felt was shame. How thick-skinned did I have to be to even suggest she come back to me? George. Willow suddenly stopped walking. Her voice trembled. Was it fun, messing with me? Is love that cheap to you? She was angry. I could tell. I wasn't messing with you, I muttered, staring at the ground. That was just. I spoke without thinking. It won't happen again. I'm sorry for making things awkward for you. I used to always sense Willow's moods with sharp precision. Before she even got mad, I'd be grinning, dropping to my knees and apologizing at lightning speed. But this time, I couldn't bring myself to smile. Not only could I not smile, my eyes stung. Willow said, Makoto and I are indeed getting engaged. But that's just his father's wishful thinking. She walked over to me, crouched down, and looked straight into my eyes. Word by word, she said, "I was the one who invited him today. And those awful things he said, I told him to say them." Being stared at from that close made a flash of irritation and frustration rise in me. Seriously, as if I weren't miserable enough, on the verge of death and still being hunted down, I said, "Well, congrats." Then, my tone was cold. "If I hadn't kicked you to the curb, you wouldn't have made it into that rich family, right?" Willow bit her lip. "Yeah," she said. "That's why I said you're a complete idiot." I waved her off and said, "Willow, I don't want to argue. I feel like shit. I want to throw up." I shut my eyes tightly, trying to keep my emotions in check. I said, "About what happened back then, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have hurt you. I shouldn't have humiliated you in front of everyone. That was my fault. Whether you hate me or blame me, can't we just let each other go now?" But Willow grabbed my hand tightly. Her voice trembled. "You think that's what I care about?" I opened my eyes. "What?" Her eyes were red. She pulled my hand to her collar. Her voice shook as she said, "I've already gone this far. George, do you think I still care about your public humiliation? Do you really think I don't know why you broke up with me?" Willow, who was supposed to study mathematics, became a doctor. She gave up her dream, and now she was here, standing in front of me. Her eyes brimmed with the kind of grievance that was about to spill over. She demanded, "After everything I've suffered for years just to be by your side, why should I leave you just because you say so?" I froze. She said, "That research recruitment, it was me. I asked the class rep to send it to you." She said, "I knew you'd come." My mind was a mess. I had only ever told the class rep about that, and I asked him to keep it a secret. Could it be, he told Willow? The wind was picking up. In the distance, a nurse was calling me to go back. Willow stood up, collected herself, and with a resigned defiance said, "George, you're sick. I won't argue with you, but don't you ever think you can get rid of me." Chapter 8. After coming back from outside, I just sat on the hospital bed in a daze. David waved his hand in front of my face and asked, "What's wrong? You look totally out of it." I said, "Willow studied medicine." David replied, "I know, I'm not an idiot." But when he saw my reddened eyes, a sudden realization hit him. His face froze in shock. "You mean, she studied medicine because of..." That night, after David went home, I called the class rep. On the other end, he answered, "Hello, George, what's up?" I said, "Yeah, it's about Willow." He suddenly went silent. All I could hear on the line was a child babbling in the background. Then he said, "George, I'm sorry. I told Willow everything about you." I knew it. Leaning weakly against the wall, I let out a long sigh. The class rep said urgently, "I know it was wrong of me, but you left so suddenly. You threw a wad of cash at her and vanished." Willow waited for me downstairs for an entire week. The admissions officers from the program showed up at my house too. My parents thought I had some genius-level grades and nearly threw a party. And the worst part, in just 7 days, she lost 10 pounds. If you had seen her then, you wouldn't have had the heart to keep it from her either. Later, when I found out she changed her major, man, I didn't feel good about it either. I was afraid you'd be mad at me, so I never dared to bring it up all these years. George, are you still there?" I wiped the corner of my eyes and replied hoarsely, "Yeah, I'm here. I'm not mad. Sorry for dragging you into this," he said. "Nah, it's no trouble. Just talk things through with her properly," I said. "All right." After I hung up, silence filled the room. I clutched my phone, a dull ache pressing in my chest. In the dark hospital room, I let out a long, suppressed sigh. I felt like a damn fool. I thought I had everything under control, thought I'd hidden it all perfectly, but the one person who mattered most had known everything from the start. A sliver of light leaked into the darkness. The door to the hospital room opened. Willow stood at the doorway. Our tear-streaked eyes met. She looked alarmed and hurried to my side, asking, "What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" My emotions were at the edge of collapse. I gritted my teeth and asked harshly, "Why did you change your major? I didn't need you, don't you get that?" Willow froze for a second. Then her expression softened. She bit her lip and blinked at me playfully. She asked, "You talked to the class rep?" My throat tightened. "Yeah," she said. "Then that's good," I asked, confused. "What's good?" Willow leaned closer, looking up at me with sparkling eyes. She said, "Then let's make up." "Okay, let's not break up again." Instinctively, I backed away, but she reached out and pressed my hand against her cheek. She said, "George." Her voice grew louder. She said, "I know what you're afraid of." Word by word, she said, "I swear, I won't give up my life for you, even if one day." Her lips were trembling. Her voice was trembling too. She choked up for a moment, clearly unwilling to say the words, but still, she did. She said, "Even if one day we're separated by death itself, Willow, will never give up my life for George." She hooked her arms around my neck and whispered, So, would you be willing to say you love me now? The wind slipped through the half-open window, brushing against my cheek with a hint of chill. The moon hung cold and clear, like water. Birds stirred noisily by the lake, then retreated, returning to their nests. I felt like one of those birds, exhausted after flying alone for 10 years. I had to keep flapping just to stay alive, just to appear like someone who was still fighting, with optimism, energy, and courage, against illness. But I was also afraid. I despaired. I resented the cruelty of fate and cursed my own misfortune. I couldn't find a safe harbor to rest in. The moment I let my guard down, I'd fall into the abyss of negative thoughts. I was so tired enough to want somewhere, anywhere, to lean on, even if it was just for a day, a place where I could rest my wings. Then, when the sun rose again tomorrow, I'd spread those wings once more and fly toward death. I pulled Willow into my arms and kissed her. Chapter 9. After the second round of chemotherapy, my weight dropped to the lowest it had ever been. Misfortunes never come singly. Right then, my landlord suddenly called. He said his son was getting married and that he needed the apartment back. No more lease. He gave me double the penalty fee and told me to find a new place within 2 days. While I was arguing with him over the phone, Willow was sitting next to me. She frowned and said, "Anna's working at a law firm now. Want me to ask her for legal advice?" I hung up and said, "No need. The compensation's actually pretty generous. It's enough for me to find a new place." Over the years, I'd been running all over the place for treatment, never really settled down anywhere. I was used to this kind of thing, but the next second, Willow softly said, "Move in with me." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "What?" Willow looked away and said, "It's close to the hospital. It'll be easier for your treatments." Always the easygoing one. I suddenly found myself at a loss for words. I said, "I just don't know if that'd really be appropriate." She replied, "It's perfectly appropriate." And just like that, I moved into Willow's apartment, a decent little place in a neighborhood not far from the hospital. Not big, but well laid out and spacious enough. Willow had to go to work, so she gave me the door code. I stood there in the living room, scratching my head. I hadn't expected to be living with Willow, just like that. It was my first time stepping into her private space. I couldn't help feeling a little awkward. Didn't dare snoop around. Sat properly on the sofa, behaving myself. I asked, "Where should I sleep?" She said, "Anywhere's fine." Again, I blinked. She was probably off to perform a surgery because she didn't answer me after that. Left with no choice, I braced myself and walked into the room on the right. Light blue bedding, cream-colored blackout curtains. The vanity was neatly arranged with makeup products. The transparent wardrobe was full of Willow's dresses and clothes. The master bedroom. I quietly closed the door and opened the other room instead, placing my suitcase inside. The sky gradually darkened. I made dinner, set the table, and sat down to wait. At some point, I fell asleep. When Willow came in, I was slumped over the table, dreaming. My wig had slipped sideways like a baseball cap, half on, half off. Just as she walked up to me, I startled awake. I said, "You're back." She nodded. Yeah, maybe it was just my imagination, but her gaze felt more intense than it had been at the hospital. I instinctively lowered my head, but my wig nearly slipped off. In that painfully awkward moment, I hurried to fix it and blurted out, I slept already, so I'm gonna eat now." Willow looked away, didn't correct my jumbled words, and said softly, "All right." I got up and made a hasty retreat back to the guest room. Touching my wig, I felt nothing but regret. This was my best wig, and just now, it almost came off. God, I hoped Willow didn't see the top of my head. I clenched my teeth and took off the wig. My face fell as I let out a long sigh. I'd never lacked anything growing up, never knew what real trouble even felt like. Back in school, I had fancy cars picking me up, spent money freely, lived in the spotlight. Before I was diagnosed, everyone thought I had a brilliant future ahead of me, bright and limitless. But look at me now. Sparse hair on my head, reuniting with the woman I love at the lowest point in my life. It's pathetic. And this was only my second round of chemo. A few more, and I'd have to shave my head completely. Knock knock knock. It was Willow at the door. She said, "Toiletries are in the bathroom. Want to come out and wash up?" I immediately turned off the lights, ducked under the covers, and said, "Nah, I'm going to sleep." She didn't say anything else. She stood outside for a while, then walked away. I waited until after midnight, until the last bit of light from outside disappeared, before getting out of bed. Like a thief, I carefully cracked the door open, tiptoeing out to wash up. But then, a faint light came from the direction of the living room. Willow was sitting on the couch. Stacks of documents were piled around her. The small desk lamp cast a soft glow across her delicate profile. And just like that, Willow caught sight of me, sneaking around. Wigless, I froze. I didn't know whether to shut the door and play dead, or pretend nothing was wrong and walk out to brush my teeth. Willow set her papers down and got up. I stammered. I was just heading to the bathroom. She cut me off. Wait. Then she threw herself into my arms, and the sweet scent of her hair and skin filled my nose. She rose on tiptoe and kissed me. My body trembled. My heart pounded uncontrollably. Even my breathing became ragged. Our overlapping shadows blocked out the only bit of light. In the dimness, every sound became crystal clear. Our breaths mingled. Lips locked. I felt her fingers wrap around the back of my neck, heard her swallow softly, and the thunder of our heartbeats. We kissed for a long time, long enough to forget how to breathe. Then Willow said, "Why are you hiding from me?" "Trying to play it cool," I replied. "Me? Hiding from you? Come on, don't be ridiculous." Willow lifted a hand to touch my head. In her pupils, I saw my own reflection. She said, "Yeah, this looks better." I asked, "What does?" She said, "No wig, just you, bare like this." I gave her a look. "Okay, what kind of weird kink is that?" She curled up in my arms and said softly, "I wanted to kiss you earlier, but you look so tense about your wig. I didn't dare." Then she hooked her arm through mine and led me toward the bathroom. She said, "I actually had something to tell you just now." She flipped on the light, and the whole vanity was laid bare. Right in plain sight, an electric hair clipper. Looking at me in the mirror, she asked, "Do you know how to shave a head?" I gritted my teeth and said, "I'm not ready to go bald just yet. I still have some hair left." Willow handed me the clippers and said, "I meant, shave mine." I stared at her, stunned. "Are you crazy?" I looked at her long, dark, thick hair, my brows furrowed tight. My brain started involuntarily imagining Willow with a bald head. Still beautiful, but honestly, kind of weird. Willow grabbed a small stool and sat down. She said, "Come on, give me a couple's haircut." The clippers were plugged in, buzzing. My eyes stung as I tried to hold back my emotions and said, "This isn't right. You can't do this." She was clearly doing this to stay with me, to share it all with me. When Willow saw I still refused to make the first move, she grabbed the clippers herself, and in the next second, a strand of black hair fell to the floor. That once smooth cascade of hair now had an awkward patch of white exposed. She said, "Well, now we have to finish it." I let out a long sigh, took the clippers from her, and with their steady buzzing, Willow's hair began falling to the floor, bit by bit. Looking at her in the mirror, I said, "Well, this really backfired. You look younger now." "We don't look like a couple anymore, more like a monk and his disciple." Willow tossed the clippers aside. She stood on tiptoe, noticed the redness in my eyes, and gave me a light kiss on the lips. She said, "If shaving my head means I get to stick to you every day, then I think it's worth it." With a little squint, she added, "And now that you've shaved all my hair off, if you still try to kick me out, I'll definitely hold a grudge." I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. In the mirror, two faces reflected back at us. One was smiling brightly, eyes full of warmth. The other, half laughing, half crying, was wearing the most ridiculous grin. I wrapped my arm around Willow's shoulders and said, "All right then, stick to me all you want. Even if you curse me out, I'll take it." Chapter 10. Later on, I bought Willow a wig too. There had been a few times when her colleagues saw her and were completely stunned. Willow accepted it cheerfully. From then on, we only took off our wigs when we were at home. A few more months passed, and the treatment came to an end. My condition had basically stabilized. It wasn't getting any worse. To celebrate, the class rep organized a small gathering. "George, how's your health doing? This time I won't invite Willow. The party's just for you. We don't want things to get awkward if you two run into each other." I had the phone on speaker, and Willow was washing vegetables nearby. She glanced down at the screen, gave a faint snort, and said, "George and I will both be there." The class rep nearly choked on his own saliva, coughed for a good while, then shouted, "Willow, what are you doing there?" She replied calmly, "We got back together." On the other end, I heard the sound of a cup being knocked over. Willow wiped her hands and took the phone from me. She said, "I'm free on Saturday. Just send George the location when it's set." After she hung up, I hurried to say, "Didn't you say you're working the night shift on Friday? Maybe we should skip it." The class rep was only free at lunchtime. Willow would be coming back around 10 a.m. Saturday after working all night, no chance to get any rest. But she shook her head. "No, we're going." With her back to me, tidying up the table, she said softly, 10 years ago, we both missed the class reunion. I don't want to miss this one too." Looking at her back, I smiled and said, "All right then, I'll go pick out a wig." She replied, "Okay, pick one for me too. Something pretty." Chapter 11. The atmosphere at this gathering was clearly much better than the last one. Everyone was lively and chatty. It really felt like a reunion of old friends. As soon as Willow and I walked in, we were pulled into the private room and seated in the very back. Classmates gathered around us in circles, left and right. When did you two get back together? Who made the first move? What happened last time? Was it a fight? Willow, clinging to my arm, jumped in to answer. We got back together a few months ago. I made the first move, and last time was my fault. I threw a little tantrum. Everyone's faces lit up with nosy, gossipy smiles. Old stories from the past started spilling out like beans. Someone said, I was the first one to know George liked Willow. He told me himself. Another chimed in. Yeah, right. I caught him handing Willow a love letter. And then someone added, that's nothing. I saw a picture of George kissing Willow. Someone gasped, no way. When was that? Before I could stop them. It was second semester of sophomore year. I saw him kissing his phone like a maniac. Snatched it from him. Turns out it was a picture of Lou, the school beauty. I wanted to die right then and there. With Willow narrowing her eyes and studying me, I just wanted to crawl under the table. She leaned toward me and whispered, you kissed my picture? Trying to act cool, I shrugged and said, yeah, so what? Willow just smiled and said nothing. Soon the attention turned to Willow. By the way, Willow, did your family move? I went back home during New Year last year and your house was empty. Willow pressed her lips together and said, I'm not sure. I haven't been back in years. She didn't elaborate, and no one pressed further. Only I noticed something wasn't quite right in her expression. Before I could think more about it, the class rep, already a little drunk, dragged me into a new game. Truth or dare. The room lit up with excitement again. After all, most of us were living in Beijing, and over the years, a few couples had broken up and gotten back together. I intended to just watch for fun, but for some reason, the bottle seemed to have it out for me and Willow. The very first spin pointed at Willow. The class rep handed her a card. Willow drew one. Everyone leaned in, faces gleaming with gossip. Someone asked, how many relationships have you had? Which one left the deepest mark? I looked at Willow, curious too. She stared right back at me and said, one. With George. My heart pounded, like it was echoing her words. The second spin landed on me. The question, what's the most painful thing you've ever experienced, and why? Someone cleared their throat awkwardly. Class rep. Maybe skip this one. George just recovered. Everyone nodded, quietly assuming my answer would be getting sick, but I held Willow's hand tightly and said, it was during my first round of chemo, when I found Willow's graduation note in my backpack. Because in the most painful moments, the person I loved wasn't there. Willow gave my hand a squeeze. We laced our fingers together, slowly tightening the grip. The game continued, but the rest of the spins pointed at other people. I still caught a few juicy bits of gossip here and there. Some questions were harmless and brushed off quickly. Others were too awkward to answer, so people chose to drink instead. In the blink of an eye, it was late at night. The final round landed on Willow. The question was, what's something you've wanted to do for a long time? Just as everyone assumed Willow wouldn't answer, she glanced at me and said, marry George. The sleepy, drowsy atmosphere was instantly shattered. The room exploded with noise once again. Amid the chaos, I looked at her in disbelief. Before tonight, I had never dared to even hope that I could marry Willow. The class rep, clearly drunk, couldn't be stopped. He stood and declared, let's raise a toast to this couple for finally ending their 10-year-long love marathon. Someone else laughed. Don't jinx it. Class rep, save that speech for the wedding. Yeah, I'm telling you, they don't need to hire a host. Just let you run the show. Everyone burst into laughter, as one taxi after another pulled away. The joyful night finally came to an end. The class rep rubbed his eyes and patted both me and Willow on the shoulder. He said, good. You two, take care of each other. I'll be waiting for the wedding banquet. Watching him walk away, I suddenly imagined a wedding scene, him standing there as the MC, working the crowd and lighting up the mood. I opened my mouth, hesitated for a moment, then asked, will your parents agree? She said, don't worry about them. We'd both had a few drinks. We were slightly tipsy. Back at home, we kissed with abandon. I pried open her warm lips, letting instinct take full control, ravenous and unrestrained. All my doubts vanished into the quiet euphoria. What remained was complete surrender. Beneath my palm, I could feel Willow's pounding heartbeat. So vivid, so real, so full of life. In the darkness, my hands fumbled blindly before slowly finding the right path under her silent guidance. Later, she held onto my arm, her voice full of concern. Tell me if you're tired, I said. I'm not. I'm just getting started, she whispered back. Okay. Chapter 12. To take care of my health. We didn't go for long that night. I lay in bed for a while, drifting off, half asleep. I vaguely heard Willow talking on the phone. Her sharp voice slipped through the crack of the door, laced with a kind of hostility I had never heard from her before. I got out of bed and opened the door. Willow's voice came from the living room, clearly annoyed. She said, Mom, I've made myself very clear. This is my decision. Please stay out of it. I clutched the doorknob tightly, my palm damp with sweat. I knew I shouldn't be eavesdropping, but my legs moved on their own, carrying me toward the hallway corner. Willow's mother's voice became clearer. She said, "If I stay out of it, does that mean I just sit and watch my daughter marry a man who could die at any moment? Do you really want to be a widow at your age? Willow, you've worked so hard to get to where you are now, what's the point of throwing it away?" Willow's voice turned cold. "And who do you think made it possible for me to get to where I am today?" Mrs. Liu suddenly went silent. Willow continued, "If it weren't for George, there wouldn't be a Willow today. There wouldn't be a doctor who works without complaint, who even accompanies you to your medical checkups." Mrs. Liu snapped. "That's what you should do as a daughter." Willow raised her voice. "And when you secretly changed my college application for the sake of money, forcing me to stay in our hometown, was that what a parent should do?" There was silence on the other end. Willow warned, "If you still consider me your daughter, then show George the respect he deserves. If you cause him trouble again, don't blame me for cutting ties." Clack, the phone was slammed down on the coffee table. At that exact moment, I sneezed from the cold. Busted. Willow stood up, came around the corner, and looked me straight in the eyes. Her defiant expression slowly faded into something more vulnerable. She bit her lip and asked softly, "Barefoot, aren't you cold?" I scratched my head and said, I just came out to get some water." She rolled her eyes and said, "Go back, I'll get it for you." When Willow came in with the water, maybe it was the lingering tension from arguing with her parents, but she gave off a chilly, "Don't mess with me, aura." I sighed and asked, "What you said just now, was it true?" She asked, "What part?" I said, "About them changing your college application." Willow nodded, her tone serious. "Yeah, if I hadn't logged into the system that afternoon to double check, I probably wouldn't have found out until I got the acceptance letter. So don't ever feel guilty about me changing my major. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be who I am today." In the darkness, I pulled Willow into my arms. I asked, "Studying medicine, it must have been tough, huh?" She replied, "Not really," I said. "No lying," she replied. "I'm not." Then Willow said, slowly and firmly, "Sometimes I think people meet and reunite because it's fate." My voice was muffled when I said, "Even if we'd never met at all, you'd still believe that?" Willow looked straight at me, eyes blazing, and said with certainty, "Yes, no matter how many years pass, Willow and George will always end up together. It's just a matter of time." Chapter 13. After that day, I finally started seriously thinking about marrying Willow. Willow confidently told me that the survival rate for my illness was very high. It would hardly affect my lifespan, as long as it didn't relapse. Chances were good I could live to be an old man. So we roughly set the wedding date for 6 months later. During that time, I wanted to grow my hair out. At least we wouldn't both be bald at the wedding. 6 months flew by in the blink of an eye. I'd returned to my old self, put on some weight, and my hair had grown thick again. From a distance, I looked rosy-cheeked and full of life. One day, I found time to call my parents. It had been 9 months since we last talked. My mom answered. She said, "Hello, George. How are things in Beijing? What did the doctor say?" I said, "The condition is very stable, shouldn't be any big problems." She said, "That's good. We haven't heard from you for so long. Your dad and I were thinking of coming to see you. If your little brother wasn't busy with the elementary to middle school transition, we'd already be there." Not long after I got sick, my parents had another son. All their focus shifted to him. I didn't really blame them. A son who might pass away at any time just couldn't compare to a second child who was healthy, talented, and had a great personality. Besides, before my brother was born, they had already spent a lot of money on my treatment. Right before the call ended, I quickly said, "Mom, I'm getting married." She asked, surprised. "Married? Someone wants to marry you?" She blurted it out, her tone couldn't hide the shock. I said, "Yeah, you know her, Willow. She's in Beijing now, a doctor who specializes in hematological diseases." She said, "That's great. Your dad and I are really happy for you. It's a relief knowing someone will be there for you. Have you set the date? Where will the wedding be?" "Oh wait, your brother just spilled the dog treats. We'll talk about the rest next time." As I listened to the beeping tone on the phone, the words, "Bring Willow to meet the family," stuck in my throat. Willow squeezed my arm and asked, "What did they say?" I looked up, stunned for a long moment, then said blankly, "They got a dog." No one told me. From the days when my parents were by my side every day, to taking turns bringing me to the hospital after my brother was born, to me eventually going alone and only getting a call every month, then every 6 months, until now, they got a dog, and no one told me. I couldn't really describe how I felt inside. Willow understood everything. She held onto my arm firmly and said, "Marriage is between the two of us. We'll decide it together." "Okay," I said. "Okay." The wedding was finally held in Beijing. We didn't make a big event out of it. We got our marriage certificate and then invited our classmates and friends out for dinner that evening. Our class president got drunk again, sobbed loudly, and insisted on emceeing the whole thing. No one could stop him. The atmosphere that night was incredible. With the class president's help, Willow and I had a small wedding of our own, and received heartfelt blessings from our friends and classmates. Everyone partied and laughed together. The next day, Willow and I started our honeymoon. We made a pact that every place we visited, we would take lots and lots of photos and post them on our photo wall at home. Over the next few years, we traveled across all corners of the country. Mountains, rivers, lakes, deserts, snow-capped peaks, all became backgrounds in our pictures. The young couple slowly grew mature, and eventually, fine wrinkles crept into the corners of our eyes. Now, it's been 20 years since our wedding. I just came out of the hospital, holding a clean bill of health in my hand, looking at Willow waiting for me by the car. I made a wish that I can stay healthy and be by her side for the next 20 years. Chapter Extra, from the perspective of the elderly Willow. The year George passed away, he was already a little old man. He had lived a full and lively life, but at 73, his illness relapsed. He didn't make it through the third round of chemotherapy and passed away. By then, Willow had already made a name for herself in the medical world. Many came to offer their condolences. They all said, "He lived to 73, that's a long life." Diagnosed with lymphoma at 18, and he still made it to 73, he really beat the odds. Even right before he died, George was still holding Willow's hand, smiling and comforting her. "I made it to 73, you better admit that's pretty badass. When I'm gone, use my medical records for your research, and when you've got time, go dance with some other old men in the square. You must be tired of me after all these years, right?" Willow only gripped his hand tightly and said nothing. Medical technology had advanced significantly compared to when they were young, but those aggressive treatments were still too much for a 73-year-old body. Palliative care was a choice Willow and George had made together. So, when the day came, Willow seemed calm. She handled George's funeral quietly, then returned to an empty house. The sudden absence of a person in their old home was hard to get used to. Willow didn't pack away George's belongings. His clothes still hung neatly in the closet. His toothbrush still stood by the sink. She continued watering the half-dead spider plant he kept on the balcony. That photo wall. From their first honeymoon at 28, all the way to 73, their photos filled the wall. Thousands of them, perfectly arranged, untouched. Sometimes Willow would just sit quietly on the sofa, staring at the wall of photos in a daze. Then, when it was time for dinner, she'd go out to buy groceries and come back to cook. At first, her students were worried about her. They often came to visit. After all, the two of them had been in love their whole lives, and they were afraid their teacher wouldn't be able to cope. But for over half a year, Willow lived her days as usual. The house was always spotless. She even started writing a book. She poured all her life's knowledge into that book. Eventually, her students were reassured. Another 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. Willow was now 78 years old. Even a cold would leave her coughing for half a month. That day was her and George's wedding anniversary. Her students knew she would be visiting George's grave, so they didn't come by. Willow got up early, dressed neatly, and even dyed her hair. On the way, she picked out a bouquet, freshly bloomed, still wet with dew. As always, she stopped by the cemetery caretaker's office first, an old man over 80 himself. When he saw Willow, he chuckled. "You're here again, ma'am?" Willow asked. "Any letters from him this year?" The caretaker searched the mailbox for a while, then shook his head. "None this year." Willow nodded and walked in without another word. She arrived at George's grave, placed the flowers in front of him, then sat down beside the tombstone. From her coat, she pulled out a thick bundle of carefully preserved letters, each sealed in a plastic sleeve, not a single corner bent. These were the letters George had left behind for Willow. Letters that the cemetery caretaker had received one after another after George's passing. George had left specific instructions. "If she doesn't come to visit me, don't give them to her," the caretaker asked. "Why not?" George said. "That would mean she started a new life," the caretaker asked. "What if she keeps coming?" George said. "Then give them to her." Willow opened the first letter. Even though she already knew every word by heart, she still read it, word by word. "Willow, do you miss me already? Stop. I know exactly what you're thinking. Remember what you promised me, live well. One of your students came to me the other day, complaining they were stuck on some academic problem. For the sake of all humankind, you have to keep working hard. And my spider plant, take good care of it. Bring it indoors in winter. Avoid direct sunlight in summer. And don't overwater or the roots will rot. If you've got time next year, bring the spider plant when you visit me." The second letter came from the following year. All right. So you managed to keep the spider plant alive. Born to be a plant whisperer, Maybe we should have had a kid after all. See, now no one's there to keep you company. Have you got your eye on any old man lately? If you do, tell me about him. Widowers are the most available. I'll look into it from down here. Scattered in between were a few rambling ones. One said, suddenly remembered the yak hot pot we had in Tibet back in 34. God, it was so good. If I'd known, we would have gone back again. How about it? Go once more, for me. Another read. Around the summer solstice, the lychees in the south start to ripen. That's when they taste best. Go by plane. Okay. Another said, so many places we never finished exploring. We only made it halfway through the south. I remember you loved spicy food. Can you still eat it now? As Willow kept reading, a smile appeared on her face. She could picture exactly how George looked as he said these things. That nagging little old man, just like when he was alive. Soon, the stack of letters was almost gone. Only the last one remained, the one from the previous year. It read, you came again. Why do you come every single year? Is life really that boring now? Who the hell talks to a dead man every year? Miss Lou. What am I going to do with you? I don't think I can keep writing anymore. I've always been afraid that one day, on a whim, you'd come looking for me down here. That's why I kept writing all these letters. Rambling on and on. I counted, there should be more than 20 by now. Ha ha ha. I bet you won't even make it to this one. By now. You must have started a new life, right? Congratulations. Really, but if you've made it this far, all right, I admit, I'm deeply moved, but this should be the end. Willow, I won't write you any more letters. I'm really sorry for leaving you alone. Sometimes I think, ordering you to stay in this world, running around as I pleased, forcing you to keep living, it was selfish. Everyone sees life differently. I won't interfere with your choices anymore. I won't wish you health and long life. I'll wish you peace of mind and lasting happiness. After finishing all the letters, Willow sealed them back up carefully. That year, in the deep autumn, she truly didn't receive any more letters from George. Maybe she no longer needed them. That night, the cemetery caretaker had a few drinks and fell asleep. By morning, the world outside was covered in snow. It had snowed overnight. He grabbed a broom and staggered into the cemetery, passing rows of small headstones. He turned a corner, and suddenly, the view opened wide. He hiccuped from the alcohol, then spotted someone from a distance, leaning against a gravestone. Snow had fallen thick across their shoulders. The figure was curled up, cradling something in their arms, perfectly still, as if asleep. The caretaker walked closer and saw that frost had formed on the person's eyebrows. He reached out a hand and gently nudged. Hey, ma'am. Willow collapsed backward, motionless. She was 78 years old, after 5 years of separation. In the fierce wind and snow, Willow seemed to see George's figure in a dreamlike haze. He was a warm orb of light. Smiling and waving to her from afar, Willow lifted her foot and walked toward him. Their fingers interlocked once again. The meeting and reunion of two souls is simply fate. Willow and George were always meant to be together. It was only a matter of time.